Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Ivern Jungle. I think there's a pretty bad direction in which the runes that are commonly ran on him. Ivern's a pretty niche jungler and is really like not even picked up until higher MMR. And the most common rune you see on him is Summon Aery. Summon Aery is okay. It's definitely not like impossibly bad on him, but the Summon Aery you end up with a rune page about like this. Um, the benefits of Summon Aery is that it gives you damage whenever you are attacking the enemy, and then also gives you shielding power whenever you're shielding your allies. The thing is with Summon Aery is that with Ivern, the champion really only functions through his allies. He's like a true support in that sense. And you should really be looking to empower what they do as much as you can. And through the sorcery tree, you're really just giving a lot of things to yourself versus to your allies. You get a magic damage shield for yourself. You could also get movement speed or mana. That's not really entirely useful unless you're like on top of someone. With the Transcendence, you do get more cooldown reduction, which would give you more Qs and then more Es, basically, which isn't entirely bad, but it's harder to get to level 10 with a new jungle, and then it's not that bad. With Water Walking, you get bonus AP whenever you're in the whenever you're in the river, and then also extra movement speed. It's not so bad. And then Futures Market, Cosmic Insight, Futures Market helping you get to Mobies faster, and then Cosmic Insight just giving you cooldown reduction in general is effective even really early on Ivern. And then if you are playing with Aery, it kind of shows that you're going to be playing for ganks anyways, and with the attack speed you would just be able to slow the enemy more often with the red buff, and then also just deal more damage throughout a gank. This is like, it's all okay, but I really think with Ivern you should be asking like what you can do to, again, help your allies the most or give the most to them, as if you're playing him as a ganking jungler regardless, then you might as well be playing another champion, because Ivern is like effectively like a Morgana plus a Janna in the jungle compared to other junglers, and he has the ability to provide so much to his team through utility and then through the support items that you might as well excel at doing that than getting a little bit of extra damage early in ganks. So the Keystone that I'm going to be recommending is Guardian and then Summoner Spellbook. With Guardian, you get whenever you're near an ally who takes damage, or you shield them whenever they're taking damage, they get a bigger shield, and then they also get more movement speed whenever they get that shield. So it makes your initial shield onto an ally defensively bigger, and then also give the movement speed so they can use that offensively or defensively. And even if you're shielding them offensively, if the enemy turns for any instance of damage, then it's also going to proc the Guardian Shield, helping them either chase down the person or run away from them. The Guardian Shield is on a pretty significant cooldown, as it's 70 to 40 based on your level, so most of the time you're playing around about a 1 minute cooldown. And with that, it's completely fine in the jungle because you're usually just using it for your counter ganks, where you're not going to be counter ganking every minute. So the cooldown isn't that bad. And then come team fights, it's also not that bad, as so long that you don't waste it, then you have a way more significant shield for an ally once the enemy dives onto them. So you do have to consider that. Like, yes, you can have bonus shielding from the Aery, but the shielding amount isn't going to be as big as Guardian can be. They're also not going to get the extra movement speed away from the enemy. So with Ivern Shield, you have the shield value, and then you also have a slow. So it's really, really, really effective against enemies that want to dive onto your carries. And with Guardian, giving the extra movement speed and just having this higher amount of shielding is way, 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 way better. You're also going to amplify this a lot through Forbidden Idol items and through Athenes. With Summon Aery as well, other support champions just make better use out of it. Like, if you think about support champions in the bot lane in the laning phase, Summon Aery makes complete sense. Let's use like John as an example. In the early game, levels 1 to 4, you have a lot of opportunities to damage the enemy champions, and then that's the value of Aery. You're simply dealing more damage in every instance of your damage, so your auto attacks and your abilities as Janna. And then come mid to late game, all Janna can do is play backline. So it makes her shield stronger, and she's going to get multiple shields off because you can get 2 of her shields off, and then if you're ulting with Janna, it's constantly proccing the summon Aery. Ivern really only has one way to proc Aery, and that's through his shield, and his shield's on a pretty significant cooldown, and it's not like Janna where the cooldown gets reduced through other abilities, and you don't have any other instance of healing through your kit other than through items, and through the items, there's no way to proc Aery multiple times in such a rapid succession that a champion like Janna or Soraka could do. So you lose out on just a ton of value because yes, you could have a little bit more damage on ganks, but it's just really not what Ivern's about. For the second rune, it's going to be Font of Life. Impairing the movement of an enemy champion marks them for 4 seconds. I like champions who attack marked enemies, heal for 5 plus 1% of your max health over 2 seconds. Again, it's basically just like getting more for your allies through your kit. So anytime you slow them with the Q, your shield, or through Daisy's knockup, it's going to be applying Font of Life to the enemy. And then just having extra healing from that puts your allies at like higher HP than they otherwise would be at. If you're building Athene's or Ardent Censer, this also creates another way for your allies to proc that while your abilities would be on cooldown. So pretty solid rune. For the third rune, you have the good options in Conditioning and Bone Plating. With Conditioning, after 10 minutes you gain 9 armor and magic resist, and then get a 5% increase on armor and magic resist. With Bone Plating, after you take damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 spells or attacks you receive from them deal 30 to 60 based on your level, less damage, and then this is on a 45-second cooldown. You really just have to consider your jungle matchup. Matchups in which the enemy jungler like needs to come into your jungle and attack you, and basically can test you for your camps. So champions like Elise, Lee Sin, etc. Bone Plating can be completely fine as blocking. It just effectively gives you more health, and through that, if you're surviving their attacks on your camps, then it gives your team more time to respond to them, and then you just turn their invade like against them. With Conditioning, if you're in a matchup where the enemy jungler's farming or ganking lanes instead of invading you, then Conditioning is going to be your better option. For the fourth rune, Revitalize is obviously going to be your best option. With it gives your heals and shields you cast or receive are 5% stronger and increased by an additional 10% on targets below 40% health. This comes in very clutch, especially in combination with Guardian, Font of Life, Athene's, and Redemption. They all just have huge synergy with like just basically keeping your allies alive and saving them from dire situations, and to just make your heals stronger and your shield stronger. So it's everything Ivern's doing with his kit and through his itemization. For the secondary runes, it's going to be Futures Market and Cosmic Insight. Nothing changes there. And then for the adaptive runes, you can go cooldown reduction, armor, and then flat health. If you're against an AP matchup in the jungle, you can go magic resist. That's completely fine too. You don't need the double resistances as you're usually just not skirmishing early. And then you also don't have to take armor because you don't take damage from the camps as Ivern. And then the value of cooldown reduction is that you just simply have more Q and E's off cooldown more often. And in combination with Cosmic Insight, is going to give you about 10% cooldown reduction around level 9 or so. With Futures Market on Ivern, it's mostly just about getting your boots of mobility on your first recall. I have an Ivern clear video. It's in the description, and it's probably it's probably just popped up as well. And in that video, it shows like how to clear, and then on your first recall, get boots of mobility, and then you basically have full options on the map to gank any lane or invade the enemy's opposite side jungle of where they started. So with that, like Ivern really needs that to function after his first clear. And then he makes really good use out of the item CER from Cosmic Insight as well. And then with the scaling health, since you spend your HP for the camps, it makes the most sense, and where you don't need the extra resistances for yourself, it also makes okay sense. And again, you can switch the resistances. So this would be the rune page that I recommend for Ivern, as you give the most to your allies with it, mainly in Guardian, Font of Life, and Revitalize. And without it, you're just simply missing out on extra shielding and healing that you otherwise could have access to in exchange for in exchange for like a little bit of damage, maybe a magic damage shield, maybe some mana, 10% cooldown reduction at level 10, which takes a long fucking time to get to in solo queue, and then a little bit of ability power and movement speed in the river. I just don't think it's worth, man. I really don't. And if you're really trying to all in damage, shit, the people who are running Summon Aery are probably on the wrong path anyways. You should probably just go Electrocute, Cheap Shot, any of these, and then Relentless Hunter into whatever. But like, if you're going to do that, you shouldn't be playing Ivern, in my fucking opinion. For Summoner Spellbook, I think it has pretty valid use on Ivern as well. If you have champions that can't make great use out of a shield or don't need it, so I'm thinking of like really like tanky champions already. So maybe a champion like Ornn in the mid lane, Scion in the top lane, Cho'Gath, etc. When you have champions on your team that wouldn't make great use out of shielding, then with Summoner Spellbook, you add a different dimension to how the jungle can play out. And then also, when you bring 2 Summoner spells to a team fight, it becomes really annoying for the enemy, especially where you're playing Ivern and you have your shield and your root and Daisy. So if you have an Ignite and an Exhaust, or a heal and an Exhaust for your carries whenever you're team fighting, then that could outweigh Guardian. And you could still go into the Resolve Tree second and then get Font of Life and Revitalize with this page. And then with Summoner's Spellbook, it puts you in Inspiration. You can have Perfect Timing, Futures Market, and then still Cosmic Insight. So, and then with Summoner Spellbook, having access to the Summoner spells still can provide defensive utility for your allies. You're really just missing out on the extra Guardian Shield if you're running this in exchange for maybe an Ignite with a gank. An Ignite is always going to give you more damage than Summon Aery would. So if you're really trying to play offensively still, this would be completely fine. And then you get Exhaust, maybe a Clarity for mid lane, heal, and then you can cycle through the Barrier Ghost, etc. All of those can still have okay value in a team fight as well, but it's really about having Exhaust Ignite and Exhaust Heal for your carries when the enemy champions have to dive onto them. So this is a completely fine option for Ivern jungle, as you're still going to be able to give a lot to your team through the summoner spells, and if they can't make great use out of the Guardian Shield, then maybe consider running this. So that's my thought on Ivern runes. I really value the giving more to your team aspect of this champion versus giving more to yourself, because again, you're playing Ivern. Like, get real, man. Alrighty. If this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you think I'm completely wrong, let me know in the comments. Twitch.tv/SorryNelson if you want to watch me talk about League of Legends or play it. It's in the description. Are people out of their mind with Summon Aery? Like, come on. You're playing Janna. You're really just playing a green Janna with long legs.